Middle-earth has a lot of iconic, powerful fortresses that held out against many foes time and time again. In the First Age, this was especially true, with important fortresses such as Himring and Barad Eithel holding out many times even as the lands around them fell. Unfortunately, not all fortresses are created equal. Some fell to Morgoth's forces right away, yet at least they served a purpose. But in the west of Beleriand, in the land known as the Falas, was a tower that ended up serving almost no purpose at all. In this video, we talk about Barad Nimras, Middle-earth's most useless fortress. Firstly, we need a bit of background. When Morgoth returned to Middle-earth after escaping Valinor, it did not take him long to organise his forces and attack Beleriand. His chief foes were the Sindar Elves, Doriath and the Falas, and the Lyquendi, the Green Elves, who dwelt in the lands of Osiriand. Morgoth would launch a two-pronged assault into Beleriand. One army marched into East Beleriand, the other marched into West Beleriand, and this would be known as the First Battle of Beleriand. In the east, Morgoth's army was defeated by the Sindar and the Green Elves at Amon Ereb, although not before killing King Denethor of Osiriand and many of the Green Elves. But in the west, things went better for Morgoth. Many elves dwelt in the wide lands of West Beleriand, and they fled to either Doriath or the Falas. While Doriath was too powerful to assault, the Falas, ruled by Lord Círdan, consisting of the major havens of Brithombar and Eglarest, was unable to resist Morgoth's forces and was mostly overrun. The two major ports were besieged for several months, but unfortunately for the Falafrim, there was no hope of this siege being relieved. King Thingol of Doriath, after being tied up in the east, decided to retreat into Doriath and hid behind the magical barrier known as the Girdle of Melian. Luckily for the Falafrim, help came from the sea. The arrival of the Noldor in the north caused Morgoth to withdraw all of his forces to face this new threat, and in the Dagor Nuin Gileath, the battle under the stars, Morgoth's armies were crushed and the Dark Lord withdrew his remaining strength back into Angband. Beleriand had been saved, but the influence of King Thingol and the Sindar was now mostly confined to Doriath, and the rest of Beleriand was taken over and ruled by the incoming Noldor, with the exception of the Falas. Although Círdan had acknowledged Thingol as his lord, Thingol hadn't helped the Falas when it really needed it. Now, there's no mention of Círdan having any animosity towards Thingol, but given that his own lands were not protected by a magical barrier, he needed a new way to defend them. Fortunately for Círdan, in the year 52 of the First Age, he ended up with a powerful new neighbour, Finrod Felagund, who was starting to construct his city of Nargothrond, the capital of a kingdom with the same name. Nargothrond was a monumental construction and would end up taking 50 years to be completed, but Finrod was also busy with other projects at that time. For example, in the year 60, he constructed the fortress of Minas Tirith, no, a different fortress with the same name, in the pass of Sirion that separated the Northlands from the rest of Beleriand. He handed this fortress over to his nephew, Orodreth, and it would play an important role in Beleriand's defense. Ever the good-natured person, Finrod decided to help out his new western neighbours in the Falas. Although the Falas had survived a siege, the Sindar were not capable of building the same powerful fortresses as the Noldor, as they were not as masterful with stonework. So to ensure that the Falas would have a better chance of surviving any future invasions, Finrod sent his builders to rebuild Brithombar and Eglarest. They were given great walls of stone, and the piers in the port were also rebuilt out of stone. Finrod was not done though. Although Brithombar and Eglarest had been strengthened, Finrod did not feel the coastline was completely secure. In fact, Finrod was worried about an attack by sea, and wanted a fortress on the coast to protect it, and to raise the alarm of any potential sea invasion. So on a cape west of Eglarest, Finrod built Barad Nimras, the Tower of the White Horn. I think this shows what kind of person Finrod was. Extraordinarily helpful to his friends and allies, but also proactive. West Beleriand would be protected from both land and sea. But to put it bluntly, Barad Nimras was completely useless. Although you can't blame Finrod for being careful, the reality was that a sea invasion from Angband was never a possibility. For one, Angband did not have direct access to the sea. It was several days away, and any movement to the sea would bring Morgoth's forces through the north of Hithlum, one of the more powerful Noldoran realms. Second, even if Morgoth's forces could establish a base on the sea, they had no expertise at building ships, and given how far north they were, they probably didn't have access to the wood required to build a fleet. And finally, we're told that Morgoth's servants, such as orcs and other creatures, were deathly afraid of the sea and would only go there in dire need. The probable reason for this is that the sea and all other bodies of water were the domain of Ulmo, and Ulmo was the Valar who played the most active role in the war against Morgoth. Basically, if Morgoth launched a fleet, there would be nothing stopping Ulmo, or his hot-tempered Maiar servant, Ose, from smashing the fleet to pieces by summoning something like a storm. So, as a result, Barad Nimras never served its purpose because Morgoth never even attempted an invasion by sea. Over the course of the First Age, while fortresses such as Minas Tirith, Barad Eithel, and Himring were attacked multiple times, Barad Nimras stood far from the action, silently and uselessly gazing into the west, searching for an invasion that would never come. Throughout these years, being posted there would have been a fairly safe, but also fairly boring job. There were ships sailing around though, so I guess Barad Nimras was probably a nice lighthouse. That said, as remote and as useless as it was, not even Barad Nimras was spared from Morgoth. In 472, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears broke the power of the Elves and the Edain, and with the fall of Hithlum, the Falas was now once again vulnerable to Morgoth's forces. And Morgoth did not hesitate. The following year, his armies marched through the land of Nevrast and assailed the Falas from the north, avoiding the land of Nargothrond. Under King Orodreth, Nargothrond had adopted a policy of isolationism, so no help would go to the Falas. Brythombar and Eglorest had powerful walls and valiant defenders, but Morgoth's forces, as usual, had the numbers, and to overcome the walls, they were accompanied by engineers and smiths and miners. They built powerful siege engines, and eventually the walls were broken, and both the port cities were ruined. The few that survived, such as Círdan and the future High King, Gil-galad, sailed away to the Isle of Balar. Afterwards, Morgoth's forces marched on Barad Nimras and toppled the tower with little resistance. Although the tower had no strategic importance and didn't offer any threat, such was Morgoth's way of operating. Everyone and everything would be destroyed, no matter how useless it was.
Ironically, Barad Nimras might have presented some use during the War of Wrath when the host of the Valar arrived. At least in one version of the event, the host of the Valar did land near the haven of Eglorest, which was just south of the cape that Barad Nimras protected. It's unlikely that the fortress would have made a major difference, but it possibly would have helped. Unfortunately, Morgoth had the tower thrown down, so it provided nothing.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it or at least found it interesting. I have over 200 videos on this channel now, and yes, while sometimes it can be difficult to come up with ideas for new videos, I think this video perfectly shows that there's so much in Middle-earth to talk about. I can talk about a useless tower for 10 minutes. If you want a video on any other useless locations, please let me know. Cheers, farewell, and remember, if you think your job is useless, just think of the guards at Barad Nimras.